Hey everyone, this is Adam Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. Happy Friday, everybody. Today we're going to take a look at the full moon in Aquarius coming through over the weekend, plus more on Mars opposite Saturn and Neptune. Early at the start of the week, we looked at this huge sequence that Mars has been going through, Grand Air Trine with some oppositions to Saturn and Neptune. Then we broke down Mars opposite Saturn, then Mars opposite Neptune. Today, we're going to look at Mars opposite the combination of Saturn and Neptune. So we have been looking at things holistically and breaking them into parts. We're going to sort of put things back together again today. I'll give you some things to watch for in those four major areas of life we've been looking at throughout the course of this week. That's love and relationships, kind of internal psychological dynamics, career and work dynamics, and family dynamics. So you might notice the pairing of Mars with Saturn and Neptune really anywhere in the major areas of life that most people see these transits showing up. And I'll give you some things to watch for given the full moon in Aquarius over the weekend as well. So that's our agenda for today. Before we get into it, as always, remember to like and subscribe. I have a goal to get to 100,000 subscribers on the channel by next summer. So if you like this channel, if you watch regularly, it means a lot to us if you give us the thumbs up every day. Subscribe if you're not yet subscribed. You can find transcripts of any of the daily talks on the website, of course, which is nightlightastrology.com. I am very excited because I've got a new monthly webinar coming up in August here on the 7th house. So if you want to learn more about love and relationships in astrology through the 7th house, through your own birth chart, go to the live talks tab under the events menu and look, there you go. There's the 7th house talk. It is August 14th from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern. You get the recording. So whether you can attend that live webinar or not, you'll get the recording afterward regardless. So you can always watch it on your own time. Hope to see some of you there. The other thing I'm promoting right now is our first ever in-person retreat style training program called the Oracle Within. This is a training immersive retreat. I don't know what else to call it. June 6th through the 13th of 2026. Next week at the end of every day, there will be an informational video telling you more about the retreat. The retreat goes on sale August 11th. So that will be on Monday. You still have a little bit of time to look over the website on the weekend, see everything that it includes. And then next week, I will be telling you more about next week it'll go on sale and you'll have an informational video sort of breaking down everything that the retreat includes. The main thing you need to know is that at Nightlight, I am rooted in a lineage of astrologers that that have really inspired me, and some of them I've had the chance to learn and study with as teachers, who essentially believe that astrology falls in line with many of the planet's very diverse divinatory traditions. Just like when you pull a tarot card and no one thinks that the death card is literally causing someone to die, but rather signifying or symbolizing that maybe a death or a transition occurs, you don't say the card caused it to happen. Astrology as divination is basically the same idea, that we believe that this is an oracle, that astrology is about approaching the sky as an oracle who speaks through a symbolic language of heavenly patterns. And that form of oracular communication is something we're going to talk a lot about and understand it from historical, philosophical standpoint, the history of the mystics who studied and practiced things like astrology, who believed that time was a kind of an illusion. What we're going to talk about these things in depth. And then in the afternoons, we're going to have immersive hands-on experiences, reading charts, and talking about how to create an oracular experience, both as a reader or as a student of astrology. This is a subtext that runs through all of the Nightlight programs, and it's something I've wanted to spend more intentional time on. But I feel like to really deliver what I want to create with this curriculum, being in person is the best way to do it. So this will be our first in-person retreat. Like I said, I'm really excited about it. I'll tell you more about it next week with a video, an informational video at the end of every daily content. But I hope to see you there. There's limited space. There'll be an early bird sale on the retreat, so you can check out everything on that retreat page. It's under the events tab on the website. If you have any questions about anything you find there, email us info@nightlightastrology.com. I can't wait to see you guys in Mexico. It'll be right after NORWAC next year, so it'll be a lot of travel in a short period of time for me, but I'm looking forward to it. Okay, let us now turn our attention to the real-time clock and to this full moon in Aquarius that's coming through this weekend, plus the Mars opposition. It is just a super busy little period of time here this week. So here we are on Friday, August 8th. And as of today, you can see that the opposition, oops, let me delete that. The opposition between Mars and Saturn is perfecting, and then Mars and Neptune is perfecting as well. So if I speed this up by 2 days, we go all the way to Sunday, August 10th. By Sunday, August 10th, Mars is just past the opposition to Saturn and Neptune. And so that opposition is finishing its work over the weekend. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, but really today and tomorrow is when the opposition is coming through. Now, at the exact same time, if I back this up to Saturday, the 9th, you're going to see that the moon in Aquarius is opposing the sun in Leo. That means we have a full moon. We have a full moon hosted by the Saturn who's getting the opposition from Mars. So this full moon amplifies the Mars-Saturn dynamic. What I want to do today, given all of this, is just give you a list of some things to watch for. First, I'm going to talk about the full moon in Aquarius, sort of treat that as its own entity. And then I'm going to talk about Mars opposite Saturn and Neptune combined. Now, if you look back at the videos from this week, I did Mars opposite Saturn and then Mars opposite Neptune and isolated them. Now we're going to combine them. And I think what you'll find is that the delineations that I have for you, the things to watch for within those 4 major areas of life that most people come to talk to astrologers about, will have some familiar elements from the 2 breakdowns that we did over the last 2 days, but there'll also be some nuances that get added in, given that Saturn and Neptune are conjoined, right? So that's the point. And I think this is the way that most astrologers learn, is through isolating archetypes and then blending them, isolating them and then blending. You take them apart and put them back together over and over. You get a kind of more comprehensive understanding of combinations. So anyway, let us talk now about this full moon in Aquarius. I'm going to give you 5 things to watch for. And this would be true, I think, for pretty much any full moon in Aquarius. Every summer we typically get one, right? So these are the things that you can generally set your clock to with regard to the full moon in Aquarius. One is that we have a full moon that's taking place in a fixed air sign or a solid air sign, which means that the theme or quality of distance, intellectually or emotionally, which could also mean detachment, is in the psychic sky, so to speak. That may be a good thing. A full moon in Aquarius can offer us perspective. It can help us get that 20,000-foot view, or it can help us step out of our own perspective to consider a more collective or communal or historical, institutional. It can just give us an understanding that takes us out of our personal investment or our personal subjective center. That can grant us empathy, connection, a broader and bigger and more dynamic, progressive understanding of something. At the same time, the danger of a full moon in Aquarius may be detachment. For example, what comes to my mind is ketamine therapy. I mean, ketamine therapy, kind of a little bit of a dissociative kind of condition, but that detachment can help us get under things or get over things, so to speak, that may be too close to us, that it's so pervasive that we can't see it. So some distance, some detachment, ketamine therapy is known for providing this for people, and that can provide so much clarity and breakthroughs and paradoxically emotional healing and greater embodiment, because you get some distance to see something or get a perspective. A full moon in Aquarius is great for something like that, can be problematic for exactly the same reasons. That kind of detachment as avoidance, that kind of detachment rooted in trauma, those are sometimes problematic. Number 2, with a full moon in Aquarius, are group dynamics. This is a fixed air sign, a humane sign, one that often has us thinking about the best or brightest future for humanity, the biggest, best ideals for humanity, the biggest, best paradigms shaped by the most progressive ideals or ideas. This is a sign that can be very ideological and driven by consensus or pushing against the mainstream, but usually there's a sense of ideas and how they belong to or shape larger collective or group human dynamics. That's a very hallmark of the sign of Aquarius. And so things pertaining to larger visions, larger groups can just be louder and brighter during a full moon in Aquarius. Number 3 would be questions about what is authentic versus what represents conformity. Now, this may be an idea that directs large groups of people or institutions or companies or religious groups or schools in a new direction, because the thought is, let's be original, let's be authentic, let's not conform to the way other companies or groups or are doing things. Let's not market in the same old way. Let's not make, I don't know, a company could suddenly say, let's not put corn syrup in food or whatever the case may be. Now, when we go to the personal level of this might be, I can't just be thinking of myself as a member of a category or a group, a gender, a race, a religion, a sexual identity. Those elements of me are important and real, but they aren't everything. Somehow there is part of me that, in order to be authentic, just can't belong to a category altogether, or can't completely be identified by any category. Even someone who says I'm non-categorical and insists upon it is categorizing. So what does it mean to authentically separate ourselves from categories of identity that are socially conditioned or socially identified, to just be a self, a being? Questions like that can become really loud and important when there's a full moon in Aquarius. Also, what groups or social currents best represent me, and which do I belong to or identify with, can also be very important questions that come up. The tension between the two as well. And then four would be big picture insights. Full moon in Aquarius, especially with Mars triggering the opposition to Saturn, might be triggering within us some kinds of confrontations that lead to a philosophical change, or almost like a paradigmatic change in our thinking. So I would watch for sort of big picture ideas or epiphanies or shifts in direction or priorities, but almost like a schematic, overarching sense. And then 5 would be mental overwhelm. Look, a full moon in Aquarius with Mars creating this Grand Air Trine in the sky. There's a lot of air. So just mental, intellectual overwhelm, overstimulation. Just be careful that you're taking care of your nervous system and that you're being mindful about the potential for mental overwhelm. There's also just an explosion of mental activity that could be quite stimulating and enjoyable, or very innovative. So those are the things I'm watching for with the full moon in Aquarius over the weekend. Let's shift our attention now to the Mars opposite Saturn and Mars opposite Neptune dynamic. And I want to talk about these in terms of 4 areas and 5 things to watch for within them. This has been an expansion upon my typical 5 things to watch for, because I realized recently that people usually want to hear the symbols speaking to what they are experiencing in one of these 4 major areas of life, which not surprisingly correspond to the 4 angular houses of a birth chart: internal personal dynamics, relational dynamics in love or interpersonal, the interpersonal sphere, career, work, and family or home. So here's a list of 5 things to watch for within each of them. They're all closely related, but just shifting the focus to each of these 4 areas of life. So let's talk about Mars in Libra, now opposing Saturn and Neptune combined in Aries. Let's talk about 5 things to watch for in love and relationships. The first one to me would be the potential for there to be questions about reciprocity. And balances of power, control, influence, or responsibility. Questions about what is equal, what is fair. Basic in love and relationships. That's number 1. Number 2 would be direct confrontation versus diplomacy or indirect or passive aggressive tendencies. Watch for that conflict, because Mars opposite Neptune can be very passive and subtle and almost underhanded or deceptive. Mars opposite Saturn can be very confrontational. So you put the 2 together and you're wondering, is something being expressed directly, confronted directly? Are we trying to sidestep around it? Are we utilizing diplomacy? Are we being underhanded? Watch for those kinds of the blurring of those dynamics in love and relationships. I would also talk about savior, the victim savior dynamic, which we talked about with Mars Neptune, but then are there boundaries that are coming up around that? Someone needs help, but I have to set a boundary and I can't help. Or someone needs help and I have to compromise, step outside of myself and what I'm comfortable with, drop a boundary and allow myself to empathize and help. See, the question around helping, healing, boundaries, loss of boundaries, opening boundaries, maybe closing them, that comes up in love and relationships, I think, as well. Number 4 would be confronting fears or things that are just hard to confront, and where you would rather try to avoid them. There may be a call to confront them, or where there tends to be some aggression. Maybe there's a way of circumventing aggression to find a subtler, more nuanced and diplomatic approach. But you can feel the clash of how to address something based on the way that fear is motivating the situation. And then the last one that I would say would be issues around intimacy and desire, and dealing with blocks or limitations or boundaries, and a very different way that two people may have of desiring intimacy, accessing intimacy, being vulnerable or not. So let's call it vulnerability and intimacy as themes that are being somehow addressed. And I think it probably in some fairly complicated ways. Honestly, the hardest one for me to put together was love and relationships. Number 2, let's talk about this Mars opposite Saturn Neptune as an internal dynamic. I would talk about this as an exploration of what motivates versus what exhausts. Number 1, do I feel motivated by something, or do I feel exhausted by it? That's number 1. Number 2 would be, what's my internal relationship with desire or anger or both? How am I refining that relationship, understanding it better? Number 3 would be, what does strength mean to me? What does the building or developing of healthy, positive strength look like? And self-love might go alongside of that. Number 4 would be, what kind of work, effort, and sacrifice is required to achieve something, and what is an unhealthy level of discipline, perfectionism, or sacrifice? And then finally, I would say, do we have a spiritual path that requires effort, devotion, consistency? Is our spiritual path refining and shaping our character, our virtue, or is there some way in which our spirituality is causing us to bypass or detach in an unhealthy way? These are all ideas that are complicated by the fact that Saturn Neptune together is a paradoxical kind of union. And so whether something is healthy spiritually to help us grow and mature and individuate, if a Mars term, or if it's creating dissociation or illusion, that may be a question for us to look at. Let's go on to career or work. And what do I want to say here? Working hard toward things that are illusions, or working hard toward things you don't know if you actually care about. Both of those themes could come up. So let's say working hard without a clear sense of direction. Number 2 would be performance-based anxiety. My worth is rooted in how much I achieve, or whether or not I'm recognized for the hard work I put in or the achievements that are connected to that hard work. And then maybe simultaneously reflecting on whether or not you actually care about the things that you're working hard to gain recognition for. I would look at themes of sacrifice again, like, do I have a transcendent sense of vision or purpose that I can apply myself to with discipline within my career? Am I holding myself back from trying new things because of fear of failure? So let's call it repression of my desires based on the feeling that I'm not good enough, or I'm inadequate, or I'll fail. That would be another one. And then finally, I would think about let's just call it a cooking point, like an alchemical boiling point, where time, constraints, deadlines, and efforts are all coalescing to produce something that's maybe very good, but it's like having a deadline at a busy newspaper. You have to perform under pressure, but it's that intensity of pressure and that kind of alchemical boiling point that produces maybe a breakthrough or a breakdown. Okay, So those are some of the dynamics I'm seeing there. As you can tell with these, I'm not necessarily bullet pointing them in the same way that I would. I'm kind of working through a list of things to watch for and just sort of camping it under the banner of how you may see the aspect at play in career or work. Because I don't want to create 20 subpoint bullet points. Bullet points just feels excessive. Anyway, let's talk about family dynamics at last. Some of these we talked about with the last two, but when they blend together, I think that within family dynamics, like family constellations of karma, questions about who carries the weight or burden can be very Mars opposite Saturn and Neptune. And is it fair? Issues around anger, guilt, shame, and self-worth coming up in family constellations. Maybe being the person who tries to get love by working harder than anyone else in the family or being more useful than anyone else. I would wonder about structures of authority or dealing with energies that are very strict and rigid and authoritarian and controlling within family systems or within parenting dynamics. And then I would also talk about the victim-savior dynamic is at play, helping and healing family members versus setting boundaries. And then maybe also questions about what exhausts, depletes, or drains versus how does family contribute to a sense of, life being about transcendent things? Like ideally, our family should be systems of people that support the spiritual goals of a lifetime. The extent to which that is present or lacking may be amplified right now. We may be really experiencing that very intensely. Gosh, my family is not supportive of my spiritual endeavors, and I am going it alone. I am on a solo heroic journey spiritually because my family's all asleep. Or, and I don't mean that to be super mean. It's just like sometimes that's the case. It doesn't mean that they're bad people or that we judge anyone, but it's like maybe you feel very alone in your spiritual path or your personal ambitions in life. On the other hand, maybe there's a way in which you're being asked to rest and relax and let go of some measure of control and workaholism and accept the embrace of a resting place in life, which family often represents. Okay, so that was a bit of a soup, but so is Saturn and Neptune. Honestly, such a soup. We've had a lot of fun. I've had a lot of fun this week, I should say. I don't know if you have. I hope you have. Anyway, that's it for today. We will be back again next week. We're rounding the corner into eclipse season pretty soon. I can't wait to show you more about the upcoming retreat. I hope that some of you will be able to go. To me, really deepening my connection with astrology in terms of it being a living, speaking oracle. This is why it was called the science of Hermes. Hermes is the guide of souls and really the interlocutor between humans and the gods. And so to be a hermetic astrologer is really the subject of this retreat. What does it mean to think of astrology as an oracle, to think of a birth chart not as a fixed blueprint, but as a living oracular mantic device? How do I read for people when I'm trying to use craft, but also oracular intuition? How do you do those things in ways that are safe and grounded? All of this kind of stuff is going to be so much fun to tap into together in a beautiful location in Mexico. So anyway, more on that next week. Hope you have a great weekend. We'll see you again soon. Bye.